My name is Reese Donovan. I'm 30 years old, and I work as a senior financial analyst at a real estate firm in Chicago. From the outside, my life looks steady. I earn well. I own my own place. I have a boyfriend who treats me with consistency and respect. No chaos, no drama. But families have a way of reopening wounds you thought had healed. My story began 2 years ago, in late May of 2023, the day my grandfather died. He had been battling lung cancer for 8 months. I visited him as often as I could, driving in from the city after long workdays, sitting beside his hospital bed while machines hummed quietly in the background. Every visit, he looked smaller, weaker. But when he saw me, his eyes still lit up. He was the only one in my family who ever saw me clearly. Growing up, my parents compared everything I did to my younger brother, Logan. If I succeeded, it was expected. If he failed, it was excused. He was the golden child. I was the independent one, the one who didn't need help or protection. My grandfather hated that. He used to tell me I had a sharp mind and a steady heart, that I'd make my own path, that I didn't need anyone's permission to succeed. In his final days, he held my hand and said something I'll never forget. Family isn't blood, Reese. It's who stands beside you when no one else does. Then he made me promise to take care of my grandmother after he was gone. When he died, it felt like losing a parent I never really had. 3 days later, the funeral was held at Miller & Sons Funeral Home. The room glowed softly with warm chandelier light. White flowers lined the walls. Everyone wore black, exchanging condolences in low voices. I stood in front of my grandfather's casket, staring at his peaceful face, trying to memorize it, trying not to break. That's when I noticed Logan beside me. He dabbed his eyes with a tissue, shaking his head as if overcome with grief. But his eyes kept drifting, toward my grandmother, toward certain relatives, toward people who mattered. Whenever someone approached, Logan would hug them tightly and say, "Grandpa loved you so much. He talked about you all the time." It made my stomach twist. Logan barely visited him when he was sick. Across the room, my mother, Linda, sobbed loudly whenever someone looked her way. Her cries were dramatic, shaking, carefully timed. My father, David, stood beside her, hand resting on her shoulder like a prop. "My father left us too soon," my mother told anyone listening. My father added, "But he left behind a meaningful legacy for the family." Every time he said legacy, his eyes flicked to my grandmother. She sat quietly in this corner. No theatrics, no loud sobs, just deep, silent grief etched into her face. She looked at me and gave a small nod. She knew. Throughout the service, something felt wrong. Too many whispers. Too many glances between my parents and Logan. Too many questions about paperwork and documents. As the ceremony ended, Logan approached me and put a hand on my shoulder. "I know you and Grandpa were close," he said. "I'm hurting too." I nodded once. Said nothing? In the back of the room, my Uncle Bruce stood with his wife and daughter, Emily. They looked genuinely devastated. Emily cried openly, not caring who saw. When someone asked Uncle Bruce about the family's next steps, he said quietly, "Right now, we just want to honor Dad." That was when I understood. There were two sides to this family, and I was standing between them. 3 weeks later, while buried in reports at my office, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. "Hello, Reese," a man said. "This is Mr. Thompson, your grandfather's attorney. The family will meet at your grandfather's house this Sunday at 9 a.m. for the will reading." The moment he said it, something tightened in my chest. I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about money. And I had no idea yet that my own father was already planning how to erase me from the room. The moment Mr. Thompson's call ended, I just sat there at my desk, staring at my computer screen like it had suddenly stopped making sense. A will reading. It shouldn't have felt threatening. It should have felt like closure. One last moment where my grandfather's voice, his choices, his fairness, could still reach us. But my stomach wouldn't stop twisting. All week, I caught myself replaying old memories. Not the warm ones. Those were too painful. The ones that came with that familiar taste of humiliation. The ones that reminded me I'd spent most of my life being treated like an extra in my own family. And as Sunday got closer, my parents and Logan started acting different. Not sad, not reflective. Excited. Logan called me on Tuesday, his voice too casual. "So, you think Grandpa left anything big?" he asked, like he was talking about a lottery ticket instead of a dead man. "I bet he had money hidden somewhere. Old people always do." I held the phone tighter. "Logan," I said, keeping my tone flat. "He just died." There was a brief pause, then a soft chuckle, like I was being dramatic. "I'm just saying, it's not wrong to be curious." I hung up after that. I didn't even say goodbye. That night, my boyfriend, Ethan, found me on the couch, staring at the ceiling with the lights off. He sat beside me quietly and rubbed my shoulder. "You've been tense all week," he said. "Do you want to talk about it?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to spill everything. The funeral, the whispers, the way my father's eyes kept darting toward Grandma like she was a vault. But I didn't, because admitting it out loud would make it real. So I just whispered, "I think something's coming." Ethan didn't push. He never did. He only said, "Whatever it is, you're not facing it alone." Those words should have comforted me. Instead, they made my throat burn. Because my whole life, my family made it very clear. I was always supposed to face things alone. 3 days before the will reading, I got another call. This time, the number on my screen wasn't unfamiliar. It was my father. My chest tightened so fast it felt like a reflex. I answered. "Reese," he said, and there was something strange in his voice. Nervous, unsteady, like he'd rehearsed this and still wasn't confident. "I've got some bad news." I sat down on the edge of the couch. "What?" I asked. "The will reading is going to be postponed," he said quickly. "Mr. Thompson had an unexpected situation. He said he'll reschedule and let us know." Something in the way he said it didn't sit right. Not just the words, the rhythm, the speed, like he wanted to rush past it before I could ask questions. "Did he call you?" I asked. "Yes," my father replied too fast. "When?" I pressed. There was a beat of silence. Earlier today." He didn't give details, just said something came up. My father was always like this when he lied. He gave just enough information to sound responsible, but not enough to be checked. I swallowed. "So you're telling me I don't need to come Sunday?" "No," he said immediately. "Don't come. There's no point making the drive." And there it was. That sharp little edge beneath the words. Not concern. Control. When the call ended, I sat there for a long time with my phone in my hand, listening to the dead air, letting that uneasy feeling grow teeth. And then an old memory slammed into me so hard I actually gasped. I was 18 again, freshly accepted into college, riding that rare wave of hope I didn't often get to feel around my parents. My grandfather had called me back then and told me to come home. "I have a gift for you," he'd said. "Come celebrate with me." 2 days later, my father called and told me not to go. He said Grandpa had sent money through him, $20,000, and I didn't need to make the trip. I believed him. I thanked him. I even cried, thinking my father was finally being supportive. But 2 years after that, I visited my grandfather's house and helped him sort old records. That's when I saw it. A bank document, a transfer receipt. My grandfather had sent $50,000. Not 20. 50. I remember staring at that paper until the words blurred. When I confronted my father back then, he didn't deny it. He begged. He said the family was struggling. He said Logan needed help. He said my mother was stressed, bills were piling up, and I wouldn't understand. And I stupidly let it go. I told myself I was being mature, that I was protecting the family. But what I was really doing was teaching him he could steal from me and still keep my respect. Now, sitting in the dark, hearing him tell me not to come to the will reading. That old betrayal didn't feel like a memory. It felt like a warning. I barely slept. The next morning, at exactly 7 a.m., I called the one person in the family who had never lied to me, my grandmother. She answered after a few rings. "Sweetheart," she said gently. Her voice sounded tired. Grief had been living in her bones lately. I didn't waste time. "Grandma," I said, "Dad told me the will reading got postponed. Is that true?" There was a pause. A long one. Then she said very quietly, "Postponed." My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about, Reese?" she asked. "Mr. Thompson called me yesterday to confirm it's still Sunday at 9 a.m. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My hands started shaking so badly I had to grip the edge of the kitchen counter. He said it was postponed," I whispered. "He told me not to come." My grandmother didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice wasn't soft anymore. It was sharp. "David told you that?" she asked, and I could hear something dangerous waking up in her tone. Why would my son lie about something like this? I swallowed hard, shame and anger tangling together like a knot in my throat. I told her everything, word for word, the nervousness, the rushing, the way he insisted I stay away. When I finished, she exhaled, slow and heavy. "Sweetheart," she said, "I think your father is up to something." A chill ran through me. Grandma continued, "I'm beginning to believe he doesn't want you there when the will is read." Hearing her say it out loud cracked something open in me, because part of me, some childish part, had still been begging for another explanation, another innocent reason. But Grandma's voice didn't carry doubt. It carried certainty. Then she said something that made my heart stutter. "Come a day early," she told me, "Saturday afternoon." I frowned. "Why?" "I have a plan," she said. I sat down slowly. A plan? I repeated, like I'd never heard that word connected to my grandmother before. Her voice stayed calm, but there was steel under it. Reese, she said, your grandfather made sure I wasn't helpless after he was gone. My pulse thudded louder. What does that mean? I asked. She didn't answer directly. Instead, she said, do you trust me? I stared at the wall, my mind racing. Did I trust her? She was the only one in that family who'd ever protected me. The only one who'd looked at me like I mattered just as much as Logan. Yes, I whispered. I do. Good, she said. Then be here Saturday at 3 p.m., and don't come alone in your car. That part made my skin prickle. Why not? I asked. Because, she said softly, I don't want anyone seeing you arrive. I held the phone tighter. The air in my apartment suddenly felt too still, too heavy. And somewhere deep inside me, a truth settled like a stone. My father wasn't trying to postpone anything. He was trying to erase me. And whatever Grandma's plan was, it meant she believed things were about to get ugly. Saturday afternoon, I did exactly what my grandmother told me to do. I left my car at a friend's place across town and took an Uber the rest of the way. As the driver pulled away, I stood in front of the familiar iron gate, staring at the house I'd grown up visiting my entire life. It had never felt like this before. Not warm, not safe. More like I was stepping onto a stage where everyone else already knew their lines. When I walked in, Grandma was waiting for me in the living room. Tea was set out. Cookies arranged neatly on a plate. Everything looked normal. Too normal. But her face gave her away. She wasn't grieving in that moment. She wasn't fragile. She was focused. Sit, she said gently, motioning to the couch. For the next 2 hours, she told me everything she'd noticed since Grandpa passed. How my father had been stopping by unannounced. How Logan kept asking about documents he had no reason to ask about. How they'd both tried to help her sort paperwork she hadn't asked them to touch. Then she told me about the clause. A clause my grandfather had insisted on adding to his will years ago. One that allowed her, only her, to revoke inheritance from any beneficiary proven to be acting in bad faith or committing fraud. He didn't trust your father when it came to money, she said quietly, and he loved you too much to leave you unprotected. My chest tightened. She slid a small camera across the table. We document everything, she said. No confrontations, no accusations. We let them show who they are. I hesitated. This wasn't just about inheritance anymore. This was about exposing my own parents. But then I thought about that phone call, about being told not to come, about the money stolen when I was 18. And I nodded. I'm in, I said. Sunday morning, I woke up at 6 a.m. I hadn't slept much. My mind kept replaying every possible outcome, every version of this ending in disaster. By 8 a.m., Grandma and I put the plan into motion. While she prepared the house, I slipped into Grandpa's old study. The smell of his pipe tobacco still lingered. It hit me hard, like a ghost brushing past my shoulder. I positioned the small camera where we'd planned. The lens had a clear view of the living room. Then I waited. Voices drifted in. My parents arrived first. My mother's laugh echoed through the hall. Too bright, too loud. Logan followed close behind, already acting like the house belonged to him. A few minutes later, Uncle Bruce and Emily arrived. Their voices were softer, genuine. Just before 9, I heard Mr. Thompson's footsteps. My heart started pounding so hard I was afraid it would give me away. At exactly 9 a.m., Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. Before we begin, my grandmother said calmly, Reese isn't here yet. I held my breath. My father spoke immediately. She asked me to tell everyone she couldn't make it, he said smoothly. Something came up. My hands clenched into fists. Grandma tilted her head. What kind of business? My father hesitated. My mother jumped in. A work trip, very important. The lie slid out of her mouth like second nature. I wanted to burst out of the study, to scream that I was standing 10 feet away. But I stayed still. Mr. Thompson began reading. The house and $500,000 to Grandma. $200,000 each to my father and Uncle Bruce. Then the grandchildren. $300,000 to Emily. $300,000 to Logan. $300,000 to me. Even hidden away, hearing that my grandfather had left me something equal, something deliberate, made my eyes burn. But then my father stood up. He pulled a folded paper from his jacket. I have something to share, he announced. My blood turned cold. This is a signed document from Reese, he said, holding it up, officially declining her inheritance. The room exploded in confusion. She chose to transfer her share to Logan, my father continued, because she believes he needs it more. Logan lowered his head, pretending humility. But I saw the smirk. Grandma asked to see the document. She read it slowly. Then she looked up. Mr. Thompson, she said evenly, keep this safe. It will be evidence in court. The color drained from my father's face. And then she raised her voice. Reese, she called. Come out now. Every head snapped toward the hallway. I stepped into the room. Silence fell like a guillotine. My mother gasped. Logan froze. My father stared at me like he was seeing a ghost. "You're here?" Logan stammered. I met his eyes and said nothing. Grandma stood. "From this moment on," she said, "David and Logan's inheritance is revoked." Chaos erupted. Shouting, accusations, panic. I stayed calm. "I already called the police," I said quietly. 20 minutes later, they arrived. And as my parents and brother were led away in handcuffs, one truth settled painfully clear in my chest. This wasn't revenge. This was the cost of letting greed go unanswered. The moment the front door closed behind the officers escorting my parents and Logan out, the house felt impossibly quiet. Not peaceful. Hollow. Grandma lowered herself into the armchair she'd sat in for decades, the same chair where she used to knit while Grandpa read the paper. Her hands trembled just slightly as she folded them in her lap. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "I'll begin the formal process immediately," he said. "The clause your husband included is airtight. The evidence is overwhelming." Uncle Bruce exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding his breath for years. Emily sat beside him, eyes glossy, her face pale with shock. I stood there, still frozen in the middle of the room, my heart pounding like I'd just run a marathon I hadn't trained for. This was real. I'd imagined confrontation before, raised voices, tears, maybe a dramatic confession. But I hadn't imagined handcuffs. I hadn't imagined watching my mother sob as she was led out the door. I hadn't imagined my father refusing to look at me, his jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. And Logan had looked back, not with fear, with hatred. After the officers left, Grandma reached for my hand. "You did exactly what your grandfather hoped you would," she said softly. I nodded, but my throat burned too much to speak. That night, I didn't go home. I stayed with Grandma. Neither of us slept much. 2 months later, I found myself sitting in a courtroom that smelled faintly of old wood and disinfectant. My parents sat at the defense table, Logan beside them. They looked smaller somehow, older, like the weight of consequences had physically bent them. The forensic expert testified first. The signature wasn't mine. Pen pressure inconsistent. Stroke patterns wrong. Angle off. Security footage followed. My father's voice played through the courtroom speakers, calm and confident as he presented the forged document. I watched the judge's expression tighten. Uncle Bruce and Emily testified next. Their voices didn't shake. They told the truth exactly as it happened. The defense tried to frame it as desperation, as a family misunderstanding, as love gone wrong. But love doesn't forge signatures. Love doesn't lie to keep someone away. When the verdict came, the courtroom went silent. Guilty. My father and Logan were sentenced to 3 years. My mother received probation. I didn't feel relief. I felt grief, not for what I'd lost, but for what I'd never really had. After the sentencing, Grandma squeezed my hand. "He would be proud," she whispered. I nodded, tears finally spilling over. But as they led my family away, one question echoed louder than all the others. Was this the end, or just the truth finally catching up? 2 years have passed since that day. Time didn't heal everything the way people like to promise. It softened the sharpest edges, yes, but it didn't erase the scars. Some wounds don't close cleanly. They just stop bleeding. After the trial, life moved forward whether I felt ready or not. With my grandfather's inheritance, I bought a small house on the outskirts of Chicago. Nothing flashy, quiet, solid, a place that felt like it belonged to me. Not a bargaining chip, not leverage, not something someone else felt entitled to take. Grandma is still strong at 80. Slower, yes, but sharp as ever. I see her almost every weekend. We cook together. She tells me stories about Grandpa I never heard before, stories where he laughed louder, loved deeper, worried more than he ever let on. Through her, I've come to understand something important. My grandfather knew exactly who my parents were, and he planned accordingly. My relationship with Uncle Bruce and Emily stayed intact. If anything, it grew stronger. Emily graduated with honors. Uncle Bruce checks in on me now and then, never pushing, never prying. We don't talk about what happened, but it's always there, sitting quietly between us, like a truth that doesn't need to be explained. As for my parents, my mother completed her probation last year. She sent me a letter, not a text, not a call, a letter. She wrote about regret, about fear, about how everything spiraled out of control. She said she loved me, said she hoped one day I could understand. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. I haven't replied. I don't know if I ever will. My father and Logan are still serving their sentences. I haven't visited them, not once. Sometimes, late at night, guilt creeps in like an unwanted guest. I replay moments from childhood. Birthdays, holidays, quiet car rides where we pretended to be something we weren't. And for a moment, I wonder if I went too far. Then I remember the phone call, the lie, the forged signature, and I remind myself of the truth. I didn't break my family. I stopped protecting people who were willing to destroy me. Ethan stood by me through all of it, through the court dates, the sleepless nights, the moments where I questioned my own sanity. He never told me what to do, never tried to fix it. He just stayed. And for the first time in my life, I learned what real loyalty looks like. This story isn't about money. It never was. It's about boundaries, about choosing truth even when it costs you everything you thought you had, about understanding that sometimes loving yourself means letting go of the idea that family will change. I still don't know if forgiveness will come. Maybe one day. But I do know this. Greed doesn't just steal money. It steals trust. It steals safety. It steals families. And standing up for the truth, no matter how painful, is never wrong. So I'll leave you with this question. If the people who raised you betrayed you for money, would you stay silent for the sake of family? Or would you protect yourself even if it broke your heart?